I was growing up, my parents split when I was about 2. I grew up low income. Things were really rough, single mom for a while. Chapter 1 in our book is called Being Poor Sucks. I lived that experience. I saw how bad it sucked. And it really got me thinking at a young age, like, why? What's going on here? These are smart, hardworking, God-fearing people, and how come we haven't gotten anywhere? I thought people were rich if they had 2 bathrooms in their house. I was at a young age, I was like, I can't live this way. I'm gonna find a way around it. So I ended up getting into psychology, mainly because of like the trauma I experienced as part of that childhood growing up.
Welcome to Modern Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping you feel better about your finances. I'm your host, Jim Grace, and I'll be your guide as we discuss the psychology of money and explore the emotional aspects that shape our financial decisions and how we feel about them. A quick note before we start, although I do hope that you find the information on this show to be helpful, in no way are any of these discussions to be taken as specific financial advice. Please do your own research and talk to your own advisors, especially when making important financial decisions. Everybody, welcome to Modern Financial Wellness. I'm your host, Jim Grace, and I am joined by the authors of the new book, Start Thinking Rich, 21 Harsh Truths to Take You from Broke to Rich. Dr. Brad Klontz and Adrian Brambila, thanks so much for being here. I've been really excited to talk to you guys today.
So pumped to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So I could read your resumes. You guys have your hands on a lot of things, and we'll maybe touch on some of that stuff that's mentioned in the book. But I thought to start us off, I just turn it over to you. Can you, in your own words, just tell us who you are and how you would describe what it is that you do?
I think where I usually start was where I got really popular online. Again, like it felt like it was over 1 million followers. It felt like overnight. But I've been creating content really early since 2010. I used to be a pro hip hop dancer for T-Pain. And I started teaching people how to dance the robot. And that ended up growing to the number one place people learn how to dance online. But during the pandemic, I was living in a van. I had already established a couple successful businesses. Had at the time, still have now a little higher 7-figure income. But I've always shared online since my very first 42 cents I ever made from YouTube. I've always shared it. Now the numbers are just higher. But when I was living in a van by choice, I was a visual contradiction to what people perceived wealth and success and rich to be. Because I would say, I live in this van. Everything I own is in this van. I'm a minimalist. And also, this is my online business, and here's how much I made last month. And people would say, there's no way. This guy's a fraud, fake, scam. If someone is actually a millionaire, no one would choose to live in a van. And that's where I think I started to change my content to talk about what wealth is, at least to me. Mm-hmm. The definition of wealth to me has always been like the freedom of time and the choice to spend that time however you'd like. To me, as a minimalist, it's the objects that people think that they own. I think objects own you. I don't think we own objects. And I think the more stuff you have, the more stuff you are controlled by. So I was giving this message and talking about finance online and just like a wealth mindset. And right. That's actually how I got connected to Brad. Is we became TikTok friends because although it's on paper, our backgrounds are completely different. Right. We were sharing that same message around what wealth truly means, which is about owning your time.
Yeah, and that's a good segue to introduce you, Dr. Klontz. And, just to follow along, when I heard that a hip hop dancer, YouTube influencer was working with, a guru, if you will, in personal finance and financial psychology, it was an interesting combination. So we can maybe get into that connection a little bit more down the road here. But Brad, if you wouldn't mind just telling us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So currently I would call myself a financial psychologist. So I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm a CFP like yourself. Much respect for the CFP designation. And however, I think the story really starts when I was young. I was growing up. My parents split when I was about 2. I grew up low income. I mean, things were really rough, single mom for a while. And, chapter 1 in our book is called Being Poor Sucks. And I lived that experience. I was very curious about that experience at a young age because I knew that it sucked. I saw how bad it sucked. And I was really curious because my parents have been on both sides, my grandparents, my great-grandparents. We've been in the United States in some branches of my family since the Mayflower.
Wow.
Yet Yet both of my sets of grandparents, were living in trailer parks. And it really got me thinking at a young age, like, why? What's going on here? These are smart, hardworking, God-fearing people. And how come we haven't gotten anywhere? And I think I was really curious about that. So even as a kid, I remember being with friends, their parents made more money, and I'd be interviewing their parents. I thought people were rich if they had 2 bathrooms in their house. I was at a young age, I was like, I can't live this way. I'm going to find a way around it. So I ended up getting into psychology mainly because of like the trauma I experienced as part of that in childhood growing up, and trying to sort that out. Why did my family fall apart? Why did I lose a brother to violent death? I mean, I was trying to sort all that out, quite frankly. And so I got into psychology to help people. I then, fast forward, got out of school with $100,000 in student loan debt. And I was like, okay, great. So now I'm a psychologist. I know how to help people. How do I help myself? How do I get out of debt? I saw a friend of mine make $100,000 in 1 year trading stocks. And I'm like, oh my God. Well, actually, I was sitting next to him on a computer. You're going to love this, Jim, as a CFP. And he's buying stocks. And I'm like, oh, what is that? I won't name the stock, but I remember which one it was. What does it do? What's the company do? Like, what's the valuation? He's like, I have no idea. And he clicks the button. And I saw that, and I saw him make 100,000. I'm like, oh my God, I could do this. Of course I could do this. He knows nothing. I know nothing. I sold everything I owned to value. I started to day trade, had a great few months. And then the tech bubble burst. Watching my money melt away, I felt all this shame and remorse and oh my God. And then quite literally though, I was like, why did I do something so stupid? Mm-hmm. I started to research psychology. Nobody had done any work in that area. I went home, I interviewed my parents, my grandparents, got all the stories. And then I'm like, of course, I'm an idiot when it comes to money, because I discovered all these beliefs that go through my family system. And so that's really what set me on my journey to try to research the psychology of wealth, the psychology of money. Essentially, this book is my best effort. I'm super proud of this book, in large part because of Adrian's contribution. And I just think it's so fabulous. But this is the manual that I wish I had when I was a 16-year-old boy struggling. And so that's really what I wanted to do with this project.
I was glad to see you shared that experience. And even as a CFP, I have my own stories of making dumb decisions and falling victim to kind of the get rich quick, opportunities that are abound today. And you just touched on it a little bit. To me, this is not a book about getting rich quick. This is a book about beliefs and mindsets and your attitudes towards money and taking some action, making some sacrifice to grow wealth in real ways over time. So again, appreciate you both being here. And again, it's an interesting combination of folks that have agreed upon a lot of different things here in this book. I wanted to get into, some of the chapters. I love the way that you've laid it out, where you just put it to people right in the title of a lot of these chapters. And you already touched on it. Chapter 1, being broke sucks. Before I do that though, real quick, it might be helpful. We're going to talk about poor and broke probably a lot through this conversation. Would it make sense to maybe just define those two things? Because they're very different, aren't they?
Yeah, especially when we have chapter titles that say you have to get rid of your poor friends in order to be rich. That can sound very wrong. But so right in the very first part of the book, we define what poor actually is. Broke is literally having no money, and all of us have been broke. And what that's supposed to be a temporary state. The only reason why it stays for longer or years is because you have a poor mindset. So poor actually has nothing to do with money. It's just the way you think. It's the way you think about money. When I was broke, I spent time reading books and trying to not be broke. So even though I had no money, I was trying to get a rich mindset. I was asking questions like, how do I not make minimum wage? How do I save? I remember the first person that told me what a Roth IRA was my college professor, and I went to him after class. I said, I was like, so how do I have enough money to like do nice things? And he's like, do you have a Roth IRA? I was like, what's that? So the fact that I was curious about it was like early signs of like trying to get a rich mindset. So poor, we're not against poor people. The main reason we made this book is to help people, but we make clear that also on the flip end, it like people that make six figures, 50% of them live paycheck to paycheck. So high income and having wealth, people that inherit wealth, people that win the lottery, 70% of them after 5 years lose it. So those are people who on paper look rich. They have lots of money, but because they have a poor mindset, it's only a matter of time until that money disappears. So poor and rich are ways of thinking, and broke is not having any money. So anytime we use the word poor in this conversation in our book, we're just talking about a way of thinking.
Appreciate the clarification and the description there. So to jump back into chapter number 1, being broke sucks, you get into the Kahneman study, and I was really eager to kind of pick your brain on the nuance there with this idea that is kind of pervasive in our industry, which is this study that came out that said past a certain amount of income, you don't see an increase in happiness as you continue to make more money. And I think our industry has kind of circled around this study and started to talk and think about these other areas of our lives that can bring us fulfillment and joy. And I reference those. I talk about those on the podcast. I think they're really important. But in the back of my mind, I was always kind of stuck with this idea that there's got to be a little bit more nuance here, because once people have a place to live and food on the table and heat in their house, they still want to travel. They still want to have these experiences, and money and paying attention to your finances and growing wealth can facilitate and underwrite a lot of that. So can you maybe, Dr. Klontz, explain that a little bit more? Where is the nuance here with this idea that more money can't bring us more happiness?
Yeah, I'm reminded of the studies on, I don't know, like milk or eggs. Like I've been around alive long enough to see that, oh, milk is good for you. Oh, actually, it's bad for you. Eggs eggs are good for you. They're bad for you. And so this is something that's been researched repeatedly over and over and over. And it's fascinating because people have money scripts about this. And then they go try to prove their money scripts right based on their various study designs. And so there's all sorts of studies on this. But the bottom line, it used to be, and I certainly believe this because this was the cutting edge of the research. It was, up to 50,000 and then it went up to 75,000. Like once you hit that, there's no association between more money and happiness. And by the way, I taught on that because that was the cutting edge research. And that seemed to track the median income in the United States, which is sort of fascinating, right? So as long as you're sort of in the middle, and this makes sense logically, psychologically, then you're okay, right? So you've got your basic needs met. You look around, you got about what most people have. Money doesn't really, isn't associated with happiness. Well, there were some methodological flaws, not to nerd out too much, but essentially they did studies that were better designed. And what we saw is a continued trend that just kept on going. And so we're here to say and make the argument that actually more money can make you happier. But I think it's very nuanced. So I have worked with multimillionaires, billionaires who are depressed and suicidal. And because mental illness crosses socioeconomic barriers, it really does. However, research is abundantly clear that you're going to have higher rates of mental illness when the less money you have. And it's like, it's so fascinating. The only people that sort of really argue that more money is not going to make you happier. I mean, we actually talk about it in the book here. We're like trying to sort out the psychology of those people. Well, one of the reasons why you might want to believe that more money won't make you happier is because you have no money. Right. And then this helps me deal with the fact that I have no money. So if I say to myself, well, more money is not going to make my life better. It's not going to make me increase my happiness at all. Well, then I can feel better about the place that I'm at, maybe not be quite as motivated. And so part of the reason why we're presenting this data is not to shame anyone. This entire book, we want to motivate you. We don't want you to have this mental cap like, oh, well, once I make 75,000, I'll never be happier. I got to tell you, if you use money the correct ways, and for me, it's about experience. And this is a value that Adrian and I both share. It's like, it's less about stuff, more stuff's not going to make you happier. And I don't have to prove it based on research. Just think back to the last time you got a birthday present or something. It's like you get this new thing, and you're so excited about it. Oh my God, this precious thing, and then a week later you forgot about it, so it's a temporary boost in happiness. That's what stuff does. But experiences create memories. Financial freedom, for example, right now gives me the experience of being able to play pickleball 8 hours a week. And I got to tell you, that makes my life happier. I'm so much happier playing pickleball for many reasons. And so we really think that money in the service of owning your time and freeing up your time to do what you want with who you want and to have those types of experiences is going to increase your sense of well-being and your sense of satisfaction in life, aka your happiness.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of nuance there. I look at my kids, we're trying to teach our kids about money and they get a lot of stuff and most of it is crap. And I can't help but feel when I'm trying to educate my kids about that, think about all the stuff that I have that I probably don't need, that doesn't really, bring much joy into my household. So there's lessons about this stuff all over the place. It gets into a little bit what we just talked about, chapter 4, your beliefs about money are making you poor. What are some of the most common, maybe negative or detrimental beliefs that you see folks having around money?
I can talk about the research, but I'd love for Adrian to weigh in. He consults with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, and so he runs into some of these mindsets that keep people stuck. So I'm curious what you would say, Adrian.
Working with Brad has been fantastic because a lot of the things that I feel like I've learned through my parents who immigrated here. My dad immigrated here when he was 13. I was very blessed to have them be an example of a lot of great mindsets. And one of them was this immigrant mindset that we left the bad place. We came to this country, we left the bad, this place that we are in now, our Brambila family tree, we're on a better path because my dad actually didn't went to bed hungry. He had to steal food sometimes because in Mexico they just didn't have it. And my dad's dad was murdered when he was 5. So my grandma was commuting back and forth to Southern California and Mexico, try to save enough, eventually brought the family here. So I've had this, and we acknowledge in the book, this country is not perfect, but in the immigrant mindset, where you spend your energy and these beliefs, even though they were broke, they again believe that we're in the place where we can work and believe that we can change our circumstances through work. So that's a very powerful kind of money script that I got, and I inherited as well. Hey, we made it. We left the bad places. I can actually change, and I can work hard and change my circumstance. And even though I did not immigrate here, I feel like I still have that immigrant mindset, and I think it's a great thing. I actually interviewed my grandma. I watch it. I watched it probably 6 months ago. I interviewed her a couple years ago. So I still keep it in the back of my mind, and I was able to ask her questions of what it was like and try to learn her struggle and her pain. And to me, I would encourage everyone to interview someone that you love, that your parents, your grandparents, if they're still around, because you can learn invaluable lessons of the money scripts. And I'm mentioning the good ones. There are some bad ones too that I got. One of them was my parents. I think sacrifice, we all agree, is something. In order to be successful, you do have to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
But I also learned that if I wanted to make a lot of money, I just felt like I had to suffer immensely. Suffer in terms of pain. I have to work. I have to work double time, triple time. I have to do multiple jobs. So I did. I never burnt out, but a lot of people do with this. And then when I made my first $1,000 online, this is after 2.5 years of making nothing. Actually, what an amazing feeling, because I was working at Prudential Retirement in customer service, and I actually felt guilty because I was making dance videos. I made $1,000 dancing online, and so it was fun. I actually enjoyed it. I felt guilty because I had a belief that was money comes with great, the more pain that you have, the more that you work your butt off, the more money you make. And here I was, I did something I actually loved to do for fun, and I felt really guilty about it. That's something I had to work through. But Brad also has a ton of studies on a lot of toxic money beliefs that we get, that we have to work through. Most people don't get good examples, and even the ones that do, if you were born rich, you might have a money script that says everything is taken care of in life. And then eventually, if you get cut off, or then you're independent on your own, you don't have your parents anymore, you're going to struggle financially because you're not used to managing things, taking care of stuff. So, but there's a ton of, we're all scarred by our parents in one way or another.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't, I feel like it doesn't even necessarily needs to be toxic or leave, deep scars. But one of the chapters that I related to personally was chapter 5, which is your teachers can't teach you to be rich. and you get into mentorship. You just talked about interviewing your grandfather or grandmother and having these examples. And I just wanted to share, us sitting here having this conversation on a podcast is an amazing manifestation of some of what you talked about in that chapter. And if I might just share that story real quick, when I started out in my career, I was at an insurance company. I wanted to be a financial planner, and I knew right away it wasn't a good fit. So I kind of just intuitively started moving away from where I was, trying to find my place in the industry. And I had found this calling, but I didn't quite feel like I was doing the work that I wanted to do. And I had a lot of helpers along the way, people that helped me stay in the business, but they weren't necessarily the best teachers or mentors to really get me to where I needed to go. And I just thought it was such a great chapter that you included in the book, to be curious and to reach out and connect with people and ask for help and come prepared. A lot of what you talked about in that chapter. And here we are, because of this journey and the people I've met and the people I've talked to for help and have been willing and kind enough to help me. Now we're sitting here having a conversation, and I get to pick the brains of two people that I admire that are doing great work. So it's, if people are picking up this book and saying, I can't do this, or I don't have these opportunities, LinkedIn is a beautiful place to just go start poking around. Even if people don't have time, they're all kind. They say, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I just don't have time. That's the worst that's going to happen. So not really a question there, but I wanted to make a point that, what we're doing here today is a culmination of what some of the work you've put into the book. So thank you for that.
It's awesome.
You bet. Yeah, can't agree more. And there's something about, like, for me, every step of the way. So essentially, like, the intervention is that, if you really, really just sort of take in these chapter titles as if they're true. Like, think, how empowering is it to believe that your beliefs about money are what's keeping you poor? Your beliefs about money, that's keeping you poor. Even if you can just accept that as being partially true, even if it's only 20% true, change those 20%. What are your beliefs? Most people don't even know what they are. Most people don't even think about it. It's just the water you're swimming in. It's like, that's just how we think the world works. And one of the best things that has been so helpful for me, and why I actually love talking to you, Jim, and why I love my relationship with Adrian too, is because I get exposed to new beliefs, new ways of looking at things. It's like, I think I got it all figured out. We all do. We think we know how the world works. And to be able to be in front of somebody or have a conversation with somebody who can help you shift your mindset a little bit, it's so profound. Like, for example, like the first book I ever wrote, I was hearing from people around me like, oh, everyone wants to write a book, and most people who start books never finish them. And yeah, you can write a book, but it's impossible to sell it, or blah, blah, blah. I just heard all this crap from all these non-authors, telling me like how hard it is to write a book. And then I just had this aha moment. I was actually in Borders. I talk about this in the book, and I'm looking at a book, and I look on the back and I see that the author graduated from the same school of psychology I graduated from. I didn't know this guy. He was 10 years older than me. And I'm like, oh my God, he went to the same school I went to. Maybe I could write a book. Holy crap. Right. And then I actually reached out to him with that connection. I mean, we give people strategies and sort of scripts on how to do what I'm about to describe. But I actually ended up saying, hey, could I just borrow 20 minutes of your time? And I came to this meeting with this guy with our university connection. He was willing to talk to me because I was very clear. I just want to pick your brain. I came with a list of questions about how did you write it? How did you promote it? And I was very respectful of his time. Thank you so much. I came prepared. I did not ask him for help at all. I just asked him for information. And I took notes, and that 20-minute conversation radically changed my entire approach, because guess what his assumption was? Of course you can write a book. Of course you can. Absolutely. And even that shift, can I do it? I can't do it. Of course you can do it. You want to get around people who have this belief, of course you can achieve this particular goal, because they're a step or two ahead at least in achieving that goal themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. there's so many different connections and threads that we could probably pull on. I wanted to bring up one chapter where it seemed like you guys might have disagreed a little bit or had different perspectives, right? You're talking about meeting new people and changing your mindset and your beliefs. So 13 is, if you want to get rich, go to college, get married, and buy a house. So again, I saw this combination of authors as an interesting pairing and was curious, how did that come to be? But as I was reading through the book, there's obviously a lot of overlap and shared beliefs about money and wealth, and it made a lot of sense as I was reading it. But could you tell us about where some of these differences of opinion might lie in some of these kind of common held notions of how you get rich through marriage or college and what the value is there?
Yeah, definitely. I knew you were going to say this chapter because this is the truth. And I have a feeling your audience is not going to like what I'm going to say. And most people actually won't, because I'm the opposite of what most people consider. And as a, I would say a representative of the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, and someone that actually did live in a van for a year. That year, I invested 95% of every dollar I made, and that's also happened to be at the year at the time I had the most money. So I've lived it. It's not just theory to me. I live it. Now, I want to make also clear, I live in Austin, Texas now. I have a nice home and I have nice cars. I'm not an extreme minimalist anymore, more of like an intentionalist. But this idea is mortgage, home. The data says that a mortgage and a home is the most popular way people become millionaires. But that is true. And I wanted to counter like what the FIRE movement represents, that actually a home is not the best choice of investment. I have a nice home. I don't consider it an investment. I purchased it because it's a place I wanted to live and be here. Now, I know my home may appreciate, but I pay my home. My home doesn't pay me. And that's kind of how this lens of thinking of what investment is. If it appreciates, that's great. If it doesn't, I'm okay, because I enjoy living here. And so I wanted to do a data. We pulled multiple cities of like, when in the final book, we put this in the appendix, a true study of like trying to do our best job to look at averages across America on interest rates and purchasing home in all kinds of cities. On a mathematical side, if you were to rent and invest instead of the cost of the mortgage and the phantom cost. By the way, when I got home, I was gone for 3 months in Japan. The day I arrived, my AC bust, and that was a $20,000 bill. So like, I know there's expenses, phantom costs, did not plan for that, had to pay for it. So all those things, what's better in terms of generating more wealth? And the math would say renting is, but we are emotional creatures, not mathematical creatures. And so one thing I feel like I'm a little softer on this. I still believe it. I'll still fight it. But what getting a mortgage does is it has forced savings. And this is what I learned. I got the insight from Brad, is like having a mortgage has forced savings. So even though if you were renting and you keep your costs low so you could save more and invest to get to that financial freedom number, then you could take the difference and invest. And of course, the math is going to show it's better that way. But we don't do that. People don't do that. People will then say, "Oh, I have extra more money to spend," and so that's the difference. But in terms of math, I still will hop on a debate and talk about why mortgage actually isn't the best investment. Your house is not an investment. I still have that mindset, but I do understand that we're emotional creatures and not mathematical ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious, Brad, your thoughts on FIRE, because when my algorithm first started to serve that up to me, I think what I was getting was kind of the grifters to the movement who wanted you to like buy and sell NFTs so you can quit your job and say, screw the man. I've done a complete 180 on it as I've met new people. I just had the author of FIRE for Dummies, Jackie Cummings-Koski. Do you guys know her? She has a great podcast. You should look her up, and I'm sure she'd be loved to have you. But what are your opinions of financial independence and the FIRE movement as a whole? Do you have any thoughts, Brad, on that?
Wait a second. So Jim, you're saying your monkey NFT is not worth as much as you paid for it? Is that no? Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Social media is so interesting because the way to make a name for yourself is to like disparage other people. So I try to never do that, although it's very tempting. People troll me all the time and I can get sucked into it. I just love it when people troll me. But so the FIRE movement, first of all, I just absolutely love it as a response against the majority of our culture. So the majority of our culture is, I don't know, we need to come up with an acronym: spend everything, retire never. What, I don't know if that's the same as a fire. We got to work on the title, but this is a movement against that. Like, no. Like we don't need to wait till we're 80 when we retire. We can enjoy our life. And so it's designed to take extreme action early on in your life to set aside as much as you can to invest so that you can become financially free. So as a concept, I'm all for it. If I could go back in time, I wish I could have saved 90% of my income like day one. I was doing about 30%. I don't know where that puts me on the fire spectrum, but certainly better than most Americans,
Rookie numbers.
Rookie numbers, exactly. If I could only go back, and I had no furniture, I had lawn chairs, but I wasn't living in a tent. I could have done better. So I actually admire the hustle. I really, really do. The thing that I worry about a little bit, and it's something that everyone should be thinking about, like we have a chapter that we title "Retirement is for Dead People." And so I just want you to think about that. So we define the word retire. So retire means to stop working. And when you look at the definition of work is an activity, an effort you put in designed to achieve a purpose. Designed to achieve a purpose. What is your purpose in life? And I'll tell you this, I work with a lot of people who've retired early because of a cash event based on a business, or people have retired because they're older. And the typical pattern is that people don't really have a vision of retirement. All they know is they're going to stop working. And so therefore they're going to stop pursuing a purpose. They have a great 3 months, 6 months. And the younger you are, the more challenging it is. And then they look around and they say, hey, does anyone want to go on a fishing trip? And all their friends are like, no, I have to go to work. I know. Hey, do you want to go golfing? Well, I kind of got to go to work. I got a family, whatever. And then they get lonely, they get depressed, and then they go try to find a job. And so part of what I think that Adrian and I really advocate is and I think Tim Ferriss, I got to credit him in 4-Hour Workweek with this concept of sort of like intermittent mini retirements throughout your lifespan. And so what I encourage people to do is to get financial freedom as the goal. But maybe you can get financial freedom by buying a day of your time. Like, could you start with a day? Where you have a day. Imagine a day of the week where you don't have to go to work. You don't have to do anything. You can pursue whatever it is you want to pursue. And then shoot for 2 days, 3 days, like try to build it up. Because the downside is, let's say you go extreme, 95% of your income, and it takes you 30 years to retire. I mean, what did you just do to your life? Like, you're working 3 jobs, you're suffering. I love it. Part of me loves it. I love the concept that you're doing that. You're suffering so much for the future. It makes me really happy on the one hand. And then on the other hand, it's like, if you think that retirement is all of a sudden going to make you happy because you're miserable now, it's all of a sudden going to change your life and give you all this joy and happiness. You've sort of trained yourself at happiness can be a set point too. It's almost like weight. And you got to train yourself to be happy. And if you're not able to be happy along the journey, I really worry about you, man, because I don't think you're going to be very happy on the other side, because it's a muscle you got to exercise. So I want people to exercise it as early as possible along the journey.
Right. You mentioned time, and there is a chapter, I think, that's titled "Poor People Buy Stuff, Rich People Own Time." And I was thinking about that, I think, during your description here of trying to create wealth and that financial independence, financial freedom, so you have that time. Do either of you have any other thoughts on where you find time in creative ways, or how being rich kind of supports some of that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do a complete 180 on the FIRE movement right now, which is that wealthy people, they're allowed to have nice stuff. We're allowed to have nice stuff. We worked so hard and we saved and we invested. You got to live life. And first, I'm gonna start. I love my parents. I hired them many years ago, and now they just moved to part-time. They just started collecting Social Security, and I am having conversations with them on a weekly basis. I'm trying to fight for them to spend money, and they're still operating from like they were 30 years ago, and it is so frustrating. I'm trying to say things like, "Do not leave me." They were the first people to go from sub-zero to the first Brambila millionaires. And so like I've tried to tell them, like, if you leave me enough money for 10 Lamborghinis, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to get 10 Lambos. Or, I'm going to take all your money and donate it to the opposing political party, because like I'm just trying to come up with these things, like just be like, you guys got to live your life. So it's definitely like this mindset where like it's so hard to switch. I'm seeing it with my parents. I know they're not the only ones. Now they're struggling to spend. But I have nice things. I don't live in a van anymore. I got the new Cyber truck. I have a pickleball court. I just spent like $50,000 on. It'll be done in a couple of weeks. By the way, Jim, please visit us in Austin, Texas. We play some pickleball with Brad and I.
Will
And
do.
so I'm spending money on things. Now, the difference between, I would say, fake rich or a poor person buying those things and a wealthy person is a poor person's mindset is basically going to say, all right, I make this much per hour, and I want to get the new Jordans. So that means I have to work 10 hours in order to save enough so that I can buy these shoes or whatever object, the PS5. That's not what a wealthy person thinks. If they want that nice thing, they're not trading their time. They're thinking, okay, I want to get the new Cybertruck. What investment do I need to invest in, which is going to pay me enough so I can have that Cybertruck? So I'm living off my investment incomes, and I can say my whole entire cost of living, everything I do, it's off my investment income. I'm not trading my time for it. So I think wealthy people, we're allowed to have nice things, but on the outside, rich is what you can see. When someone has a nice car, it's what you see, but you don't know the back end of it. And that's why we have fake gurus and fake rich. We don't know, is it because their investments are paying for, or is this guy like living paycheck to paycheck to try to flex and keep up with the Jones? We have no idea, because wealth is quiet and it's also hidden. It doesn't matter what your neighbors are doing. Not really. It only matters what you're doing. And if you want to kind of get to that financial freedom point, it's really about thinking rich and thinking like, hey, it's okay to have nice things, but are you trading your time for it, or are you having your investments pay for it?
That was tough for me personally. I still struggle because of where I came from and who my parents were. I came from a really blue collar household, and my parents actually cleaned the office that my mom worked at for side money. So when I hired a housekeeper, that was a big deal for me, and I struggled with that to kind of get over my own beliefs about money and how I should be spending it. But it's freed up so much time that it's just kind of been a snowball effect. We're looking around the house. I've held on to the yard because I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm trying to grow grass, but I think that's the next thing to go. But I struggle with that as a financial planner. It's like, gosh, I can do this. I should be doing it myself. But should I rather invest some money and free up some time so I can either work on my business or go do other things? It's a really important point.
Yeah, we call it do-it-yourself-itis,
Yeah.
which is an affliction of the working class and the poor and some middle class, where and then eventually it starts to hurt you financially, essentially, because it's like your time. You'd make much more money and increase your net worth higher if you outsource some of that and put more time into something where you're making more money. And sometimes it's really simple math. It's like, I can pay less money to do this and I can make more money over here. And so we see a lot of people, as part of that mindset, really limiting themselves because they're not able to shift. And so that's where talking to somebody who's living at a higher net worth and who's able to scale up can be really helpful. And you're like, oh my gosh, you mean you outsource that? All the feelings I'm going to have if I outsource that. And God forbid my family or my siblings or my cousins hear that I'm outsourcing that. They're going to judge me. And so all of those things are barriers you have to transcend if you want to climb the socioeconomic ladder.
Yeah.
I think it's also it's lifestyle design too. My parents, they will never, it's just they're too Mexican. They will never outsource their yard stuff. But I also think, I've heard the argument, well, it is, actually doing chores is exercise. And so if you aren't doing exercise like in a gym or walking, there's benefit to doing yard work. But I'm going to share a story I never had, just because I think you made me think of it. On the day I moved in my house, my dad, he's like, was really adamant. He's like, I'm gonna buy you some stuff, and it's gonna be my housewarming gift. And then he goes and he came back with a shovel, a rake, and a weed whacker. And when he brought it, I laughed so hard. And he, instead of him laughing, he actually got really mad at me. Like he got frustrated. Like, I can't believe you're not, his words, like, I can't believe you're not going to take care of your own home. And then obviously my dad is like my best friend. I talk to him all the day. I work with him. But I was like, I see you and mom do it. And guess what? Every time you do, you have to, like, they live in Southern California. You have to, like, take this long pole to, like, cut down a palm tree thing. Cause, like, it could fall and it could actually hurt. And they're like, every time they complain about they complain like my back hurts, stuff like that. And I'm like, I see you guys doing your yard work. That doesn't look like fun. I'm not going to do it. So I did outsource it, but yeah, it's just like that. The mindset of lifestyle design. If you feel like you enjoy doing it, I think it's therapeutic to do. If you've made it like your therapy of, like, this is my way, like, I can think, and you're just an activity of doing, it doesn't matter what it is. And if it's for you mowing the grass, that's totally cool. But do you feel like you don't have enough time to do all the things you want to do in the day, and your economic worth is more than whatever it is to outsource? Then maybe you should outsource. So it's all lifestyle design at that point. Financial freedom is your choice. We're not saying you need to do this. You need to get someone to do your yard. It's more of like your choice.
I just want to point out how incredible this conversation is we're having right now. Because, Jim, I'm with you. And as Adrian's talking, I'm viscerally having a response about outsourcing my lawn. And I'm like, and I just realized that I'm still running into my own mindsets. And literally, here's my mindset that I just caught myself saying to myself that I'm really going to reevaluate here is, like, I'm like, well, it's important for me that my children see and that my boys learn to do the lawn. And by the way, like, I had a flat tire. And my wife's like, we should call AAA. I'm like, no. I'm teaching these boys how to change a flat tire. Yeah. So it's got me thinking, like, maybe that's good, but is there another message that I'm perhaps teaching them might be somewhat limiting? So I haven't landed on it. But I just love these conversations, because if you're open-minded, you're going to find resistance to some of the things we're talking about, and your listeners out there are going to find some resistance to some of these chapter titles and things we're talking about. And what we would really encourage you to do, instead of brushing that away, right, and then having a confirmation bias where you're going to double down on all the reasons why these guys are wrong, and you can find all these reasons, we just encourage you to just be curious about it. Be curious about that resistance that you're holding on to that belief, because that curiosity is and studies have been done on this. It's that openness to experience, that open-mindedness is associated with much higher levels of success in every area of your life. So anytime you run across something that you're holding on to, and I'm running into it right now with myself as Adrian's talking about laughing at the shovel. There's a lot of gold there for you to challenge your beliefs and decide which ones are working and which ones do you want to shift.
Yeah, I could probably keep going, because again, I related to so many of these chapters and the content within, and was challenged so many times with my own beliefs. But I want to be conscious of your time and kind of wind us down. We've talked about resources, mentors, finding information. I'm just curious, would you recommend, besides Start Thinking Rich, any books, podcasts, YouTube channels? We're obviously on our resources tab on our website at modernfinancialwellness.com. We'll have your book. We'll have the Brambila method. We'll put that stuff up there. But beyond your own stuff, Mind Over Money is probably one of the most referenced books on this podcast conversation. So besides your own stuff, where should people go to start continuing their education around these things?
Go, Brad. And you can't mention the other 8 books you've written, okay?
Yeah, okay. I won't. Oh, this is so hard, You want an author to mention someone else's book? How dare you? No, but I'll tell you, like life-changing books for me, The Millionaire Next Door. Okay, so this is like, and by the way, I've replicated some of the studies. I'm not going to talk about what they are. But essentially, it's so true. Like, a mind-altering experience for me is reading that book, because it's like the authors talk about it from the start. They're going to go interview these millionaires, so they have all this caviar laid out and all this. And these people are driving up in jeans and cowboy hats, and they look outside and they got broken down pickups. These are the millionaires? What? So even the authors are like, holy crap. And all the studies that I've done since have really shown this to be the case. Like, you really need to educate yourself about how people actually get rich and how rich people actually live, because you're being lied to on social media. So that is definitely it. Richest Man in Babylon. Get this book in your children's hands. If you haven't read it, read it yourself. I read it in my late 20s and it just blew my mind. And it's just this this story of the richest man in ancient Babylon and how he approached money. And it just sets you up with the absolute right mindset. So those are two books that were really pivotal for me that I would strongly recommend.
And real quick, we talked about connection and reaching out to people. I reached out to the author of the next Millionaire Next Door, Dr. Sarah Falah, and she was kind and ended up on the podcast, and she's been a great resource. So just another example of reaching out to people who you admire. So I appreciate those.
She's great. Yep.
Yeah.
I do have a book I want to recommend because I've met the authors. I lived in Ireland for a year, and Quit Like a Millionaire by Christy Shen. She was in the really popular Fire documentary, and I think they were great examples of people who work. They didn't like, I've seen some really bad Fire examples, like go move in with your parents and eat, burritos every single day made from like a dollar food packages. But she was a programmer. Her husband was also in tech, and they just basically lived really, really frugal. And then they retired or stopped working when they were in their 30s. And then they started traveling the world, living off their income. And at the beginning, when traveling the world, travel is expensive, but there are places where, because of geo arbitrage, if you're in America, our dollar is worth a lot in the Philippines and Thailand. So our dollar goes a long way. So they basically would live in these places for like 6 months, and then they still kept a place they're based out of Canada. But Quit Like a Millionaire is the book. And I think it's not just finance, it's lifestyle. And so they're a rare breed of people who they had serious jobs. They were frugal. They were great with their money, but most importantly, lifestyle design. And you may not agree with how they're choosing, and that's okay, but you can see I think we need to see better examples of people saying, okay, I have achieved financial freedom and here's what I'm doing with it. Here's the choices that I'm making. I'm not sitting idle watching TV and having the time go by and getting bored. Like, I think once you are financially free, boredom's probably a real thing, like to have fear. I have maybe a little irrational fear. That's maybe why I stay a little busy, but like I'm always doing something, but I'm here by choice. I feel like I'm always going to be creating something. I love creating. So, finding something that you love to do. And that's a great book for that.
Appreciate that. So to wrap up resources, let's get back to Start Thinking Rich. People should go buy the book, check it out at startthinkingrich.com. There's also a link, I think, startthinkingrich.com/Jim. So if they check that out, there's some additional resources that are going to come along with the book. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you guys are kind of building behind the scenes as you ramp up to launch this thing?
Yes. And I would definitely say, don't go to our main website. If you're a listener of Jim's, only go to startthinkingrich.com/Jim. And we have a lot of different podcasts, but every audience, like Jim's, like you're a listener here, and Jim's like you've aggregated around Jim because of what he talks about. And so, although money is not a one size fits all, so we're curating our own custom bonuses that will go with the book, but also beyond the book. I'm just going to share ideas. By the time you listen to this, the reality of we're working very hard on creating like a community of people and a mastermind. We do have a community as of today, but if you're looking for more examples of people that are trying to accelerate their wealth, that work in alignment with kind of everything you're learning from Jim, that's what we're gonna do. What we're not going to do is things like Jim. We're not we're not financial planners. We're not doing that kind of stuff. This is more of like a community mindset stuff. And then it's very important that you go through startthinkingrich.com/Jim to get those extra bonuses.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Where should people check out your work? Is there anything else? I'm sure there's a big push to just go to startthinkingrich.com/Jim and check out the book. But is there anything else, socials, websites, YouTube channels you want to spotlight for folks?
Yeah, I would say that both of us, we're creating content every single day. I think between the two of us, like 10,000 videos on TikTok and across other platforms, just trying to bang in people's head. If you want to stop being poor, you need to do these things and think these ways. And so, Adrian Brambila on all social media platforms, Dr. Brad Klontz. I mean, we're there trying to hustle. And actually, if you're out there listening and you have a rich mindset, please start creating content and let us know so we can follow you. There's so much bad information out there, and we need people who aren't taking advantage of others, who are trying to put out the right messages. We need more and more of you out there helping us out. So let's all do that together.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. And before I let you go, I just wanted to tell you that I'm asked before about resources, recommendations. We're cataloging all of that on our website so people have a place to go and continue to learn. And Dr. Brad Klontz on TikTok is the only TikTok reference that was given. So somebody actually called out not just your books, but your TikTok channel as a good source of information on these kinds of things. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So thank you both for your time. I really appreciate it. Congratulations on what you've put together here. I think people are going to get a ton out of it, and it's going to change a lot of people's lives. So congratulations again, and best of luck. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
All right, take care.